All right, well, welcome to our final Tech Chat webinar. This one is going to be covering Wakelet, which is basically something that I've been using with my high beginning ESL learners as kind of an alternative way to get their materials out to them. You can see here that if you want to get the shortcut to the resources and the slides that go along with this video, there's a bit.ly that I made there for you. So I'm a teacher at Cedar Riverside Adult Ed in Minneapolis, and I'm also the volunteer coordinator there. And I'm primarily working with high beginning ESLs, so that's kind of CASAs 180 to 210. But this presentation should cover well beyond that too. And so like what you can do if you're teaching more intermediate or advanced learners as well. So Wakelet, for those of you who may not have gotten a chance to try it before, is free. And it basically is just a place that really helps you to organize and present and share content. So we're going to get into kind of the most basic side of Wakelet is almost like a way to visually present and store and share resources, or kind of like an alternative to bookmarks. And then there's quite a few other ways to use it as well. But the key thing is that it's free, and they're quite committed to being free, to staying free. So they may at some point offer some other perks that wouldn't be, but for the time being and for well into the future, that's like one of their core values. So that's always exciting in education, particularly in adult education. And certainly as you're trying to figure out different resources and platforms to use, this is one that is integrated with a lot of other platforms that you're probably already using. So this is something that students can use beyond the classroom, in their personal lives and after they've moved on from our programs. This is our agenda. We're going to just look at how to get started with Wakelet. I'll walk you through setting up some of the basics of an account. I sort of haphazardly set up my account initially, and I feel like now I know a little bit more about some of the settings that I maybe would have done differently. And then we'll look at some ways to use it in class. And we'll also, if there are people who are watching this who have already been using Wakelet, I want to take it a little bit farther, give you some more ideas of how you might use it more extensively. And then we'll have a chance to make a Wakelet together and collaborate a little bit. So first of all, Wakelet is a great place to save content. The way that Wakelet is it comes, whatever you upload or whatever you share or put a link in, it comes up visually. So I use it to save primarily my resources for class, but this actually did not start out as an educator site. It started out just kind of more open and became something that educators started adopting and using in classes. So now they've added a lot more content, but people use it like to plan a trip or to, just to collect whatever if you wanted to collect even more like Pinteresty type stuff, like recipes and whatnot. But usually it's more like resources that you might want to share with other people. Certainly can just be private as well. The way that it's set up is really with an eye at curating content. So the person who started it because he was having such a hard time sharing so many hyperlinks, like trying to present and showcase some of the things that he was working on. He decided that he would just like create his own his own platform for sharing the links that in a more visually engaging way. So that was how it started, and then it kind of took off. So it's meant to be something that you can really curate and make it reflect and represent all the things that are at our disposal, like technology wise, and then also to put your own personal flair into it. And then he also included a lot of options of how to invite others to collaborate or create these collections together. So we're going to get into the specifics of how to do that as we go. And you'll see all these little icons, because that's one of the main things that they try to do as well, is to work with all of the different platforms that they hear of, try to create partnerships and ways that they can integrate or share easily between various platforms into Wakelet or out of Wakelet. So we'll get into some of that. And then if you want to be thinking about later on in the webinar, there'll be a chance to share something. You don't need to have a Wakelet account. I'll send a code, or even after the webinar, people can easily still use the code and add, just to practice, you can add to our collection, which is something that you do to relax or something that you do to get energized, or both. And so you could share an image, a PDF, a song, a video. You can even send your own video message. You can record. And so we'll just make a collection together. You don't need to do anything now. I just wanted to give you a heads up now, because I know I like a little time to think. So that's coming up later towards the end. As I've been saying, it integrates with a lot of different apps. One of the most fun ones is Flipgrid. That's relatively new. They've also integrated now with Google Classroom, and we'll get a little bit more into how you can import groups from Clever and Google Classroom, and eventually they're going to add more. They also work closely with Microsoft. So if your organization, your school uses Microsoft Teams, that's one that there's quite a bit of integration happening as well. And I won't be able to cover them all. I tried to find a list. There was like more than 70 things that they have integrated with. So I'm just constantly hearing of more, but we will get into some of the highlights that I know about at this point. Now I'm going to be jumping in and out of my presentation to be able to show you some samples. So before, I know that I've been in webinars before where people comment, like, you get into all of the how do you set up the account, and then people are like, but I don't even know what it is yet, you know. So I wanted to make sure that people can see it before we get too far. So this is mine for my ESL class. I'm going to click into there, and then it's going to take us here. I'm used to enlarging everything, because when I teach my students are on their phones, which I'm assuming most people might be on computers, but if you're on a phone, I can still enlarge it pretty easily. There's various views that you can set up, and I just have it on your typical, like, scrolling down a cell phone view so that my students can see it. So for my students, I have an image of Cedar Riverside, of Riverside Plaza apartment buildings, which is where my office is. So that's kind of a visual cue to them, like they're in the right place. Because amazingly, Wakelet has worked super well for my students to access materials, but still for new students, it's always a little bit of a learning curve. So then I have some items in my Wakelet. I think it's called Awake. Actually, I'm not as up on all the lingo. I think this might be called Awake, but I'll probably be calling it a Wakelet. I have an activity that they can practice for the stories that we're using. I have an assignment and directions that they can do in a breakout room. And I have a link to the story, which they also have a paper copy of, most of them, but just in case, like during the breakout, they could potentially click on this and then read it. And all of this, I just send it to them on WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp group. So there's so many ways. I'm sure most people are probably using learning management systems by this point. But with my students, they're using WhatsApp, and they're just getting one link to my Wakelet. And then from there, they can click on one more thing. So usually it's just 2 clicks, and they can manage that. They can get in and out of Zoom for class and WhatsApp, because they're already navigating, like receiving phone calls and things that pop up on their phone. So that's kind of within their skill set. And then I've got the Marshall reading plan. I'm not sure here if I want to I think I do want to just take a minute now to like show you a few of the things that are in here. Because for those of you that have maybe already been to a workshop for reading skills for today's adults, which is one of the approved distance learning platforms, which is why we're using it. We're using it for proxy hours as well as for the practice. They have their own, they have also used Wakelet to set things up. So people may have already encountered their Wakelet. And each story in the reading skills for today's adult, various teachers collaborated to create these Wakelets. Just checking if my internet's actually fine. I think so. There we go. They have 3 activities that you can do. They have vocabulary practice, reading, and then a link to a Google form where you can answer the questions. So my students, if they want extra practice, they can get into that. But what I wanted to show you is the immersive reader. So they, in their collaboration and integration with Microsoft, they use Microsoft's immersive reader. So you can click onto read mode, which is still in a beta form, but it works just fine. And I don't know if I'm able, if my sound will come through. I'm clicking share sound, so hopefully that'll work. And so then I enlarge it more for my students, but they have, the visual of the sound, so they can click here on the sound to listen to the story at home. So I'll just push play.
Reading is important. Juan and Rosa want their son to be a good reader.
Just for example. So there's the immersive reader reads any text of a story that is on there or any text that you might add to a Wakelet. So that's kind of an added bonus. There's more options of all kinds of things. You can enlarge the text, you can slow down the reading, because that was very fast for my students, but there's a couple slower speeds that they can do. And then there's also grammar options where they can see the syllables, they can highlight different parts of speech in different colors, and they can also turn on the labels so that they don't have to remember that verbs are read. It will be labeled as a verb. So quite a bit is in that immersive reader function, and that's something that is available in all of the text that's on Wakelet. So then just another tip for teachers is if you're using learning platforms and students, or anything that students need a code to get into or need to see regularly, I just put it on the bottom so it's always there. The top changes according to my activities sometimes. And I don't have a ton of collections at all for my students because I'm trying to keep it simple, but a more intermediate or advanced class could certainly have quite a few collections, and we'll get into how to make those. We just use ReadWorks and MobyMax as kind of additional features, platforms that students can use. So I have those there, and we practice getting in and out of that in class so that if they want to, they can use that later on. So feel free to jump in with questions at any point, but otherwise I will keep going. I have a few more samples. I went extensively into mine. The other samples, I'll just be really brief. And the links to all of these are in the slides, which I gave you the bit.ly at the beginning, but also at the end, I will show you again where we have a Wakelet for this TechChat. So I have like all the resources together in a Wakelet that I made that you can go to, and you can find the slides in there. So all of these things are things that should be pretty easy to find. This is just an example. I Googled, forget what I Googled. I think I actually not Googled, but I searched in Wakelet for scatter plots because I was just curious what would come up. That's not something I have much opportunity to teach, but I do try to teach some pre-math, kind of early math skills. So this is an example of a teacher, and I'll minimize it a little bit more if I can, back to more normal size. And he uses it for his lessons. And so his assignment, his like weekly assignments are in here. So you can see tells what videos to use, what assignments to do. It shares the YouTube videos in there. It shares links to IXL. He included a help session. So it looks like they use Microsoft Teams. Students could come to their help session. Then there's another video. Anyway, it goes on. And so you can put your assignments, your meets or Zoom links or anything, and it can be private. This one happens to be public, but they're not automatically public. So they can be unlisted or private, depending on your need. So another one to show you is, coming up. Oh, how did I end up there? Sorry. Let's try to go on. There we go. This is more of a corporate type one. So, and this is outside the scope of my actual knowledge, but it was something that I came across as one of the partners with Wakelet, and I was curious what it was. And then I found out. So this is called a company called Merge, and they do virtual reality, various things that they can do. And they advertise like virtual field trips for students and things. And so they have a Wakelet. They decided that their like outward facing primary way of sharing resources would be on Wakelet. So this is something that educators can access for their students, or students can access just for fun. I do see something in the chat and I'm not quite sure. Oh, Wakelet for a Wakelet. Okay. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go into it here, but they have various things. And of course, I was interested. There's one farther down, refugee studies and virtual reality. I mean, that could be interesting in our line of work, depending on your student population. But just to say that it's worth exploring what Wakelet's different partnerships are, because sometimes they will put a lot of their resources on a Wakelet to share. And then finally, this is more of an example of something that a student could come up with, or a lot of times people do use it for projects with students once they are at the point of starting to find resources online. So this is one that somebody did about Somalia. And I mean, even just sharing this in class for me would be fun, because a lot of my students are from Somalia. And I don't know how I came across this either, if I actually searched for Somalia or if I just found it, but this just highlights the beauty of Somalia. So her point is that Somalia is a beautiful country with amazing food and culture. And so she's trying to highlight that and share various things. So this is like a classic example of something that students might actually create. Just want to click forward and show you here that this is where up in here in the not in the settings, but in these little icons, you can save. So I love this collection. I would certainly want to show it to my students. So I can save it to my bookmarks. If the creator of the Wakelet has turned on copy collection, like permits the collection to be copied, then this option shows up and you can copy the collection, which is a great feature, because then it kind of shows up as your collection. It does cite the person who you copied it from, but it shows up in a different way that has its own benefits. And then if you click on the little arrow there, you can share your collection, or even share this collection. So I can share a collection I didn't make because hers, it's listed as public. So you can share it any number of ways, where you can copy the code. You can also print it. You can export it as a PDF. And then this is a feature that I think there's a slide about it later, but if you click embed, you'll get an embed code. And so you could use the embed code to put it into your LMS, your website, or wherever you would need that. So that is a feature that is something that people use a lot with Wakelet, with learning management systems. So I will just kind of quickly walk you through setting up an account. This is where later on, I'll give you a code. You can enter the code assuming that people maybe don't have an account. So yeah, there's no need to have an account to contribute to a Wakelet. You can invite students to contribute and collaborate and view Wakelets without they don't need accounts. So today we're going to do that feature by entering a code, but this is where you can obviously sign up. You can sign up with email or with any of these other options. I think I just signed up with Google because that's what I often do. But yeah, everybody I'm sure has their preferences. You create your account, kind of all very typical. As I said, Wakelet is not necessarily just an education or an education tool. So they ask you to help customize it by picking a couple areas of interest. For teachers, I would definitely choose education because they will try to, they will be sharing stuff, I think, with you a little bit. Or possibly that might affect the things that show up in your showcase. So showcase is a feature that it doesn't come to you unless you click on it. It's up on the top menu, but it probably affects what shows up in your showcase, where they highlight different Wakelets that are popular. I did not choose the browser extension right away, and I think that was fine. But later on, I did find that the browser extension is really helpful, and we'll get into that a tiny bit later too. But right now, they have Mozilla, Chrome, and Microsoft Edge as far as browser extensions. And I'm again using Google, so that's what I know more about. But on Wakelet, you have a profile, and you can have multiple profiles, which are called spaces, and we'll talk about that on a different slide. But for now, this is setting up a profile where you have a profile image, doesn't have to be your face. And then they have a chance to upload an image or to choose from the library. So usually I choose from the library, and that just goes straight to Unsplash. So Unsplash has a lot of pictures available. You can search for what you want. I think I wanted a forest at that moment, so I put forest. And then there's a spot to do a bio, which you don't have to do. And then there's a little plus to add more links. So this is where if you had a website or if you wanted to link, if you were doing a teacher kind of one or an educator school side of one, you could think more like that. If you were doing a personal one, you could link your Instagram or for me, I linked Twitter here. And then I think later I added LinkedIn. But if it's, then it'll show, like here you have the little bird icon comes up. If it's something that Wakelet is integrated with already, then it'll show a little icon and people can click on that for more information. I did not have a very extensive profile to show, so I went looking for somebody who's more of like a tech coach. And just to give you an example of somebody that really had their profile set up with sections. So she's got quite a few sections. Some are personal, some are more professional development, some are techie. And then you can see that each one, it tells you how many items. So 57 items of her favorite apps, or 26 items about Google spring cleaning. I don't know what all that is, but those are examples of collections. And we'll look here soon at how to, here we are, how to make collections efficiently. Because I certainly was a bit lost at first. It wasn't really hard. I just, I wouldn't say I was a power user because I was just trying to keep it super simple. And I was experimenting, with so many things, and sort of happened upon a Wakelet and ended up liking it. So here we are. I clicked home to get here. This is what it looked like. And then you're going to click on a plus to create a new collection. And first, you don't have to put an image, but you can add an image and a title and a description. Certainly a title would be a good idea. And then you click on settings up in the corner, and you're going to see more options. So you can add a background image that would be on the whole page. And then this is something that the Wakelet community which is pretty active, and they're on Twitter a lot. They really ask to consider turning on copy collection, because copy collection, so say you have students who are looking at your collection and say they're starting to use Wakelet themselves, like maybe they have, if they have their own account. This would be not be probably for my students, but more in the more advanced or GED or higher level ESL. They might want to copy collections in order to have it for themselves. And so, or you might want to copy someone else's collection. And that's only possible if they've toggled the sharing on. So certainly not required. Many instances where you wouldn't want to have it copyable, but something to think about as you're creating it, whether someone else would benefit from having it or copying it. And then whether you're going to be working together with colleagues or with students if you want other people to be contributing to the collection, or if you're just making it yourself. If you want there to be contributors, then you click on the invite button, and there's various ways to get that, but you can copy the link. You can use the QR code. You can just get the code. These are the ways that I would suggest. And then you can also do username or email. So I'm just not in the situation where I need to send it to, when I'm thinking about students or a group of people, it's much faster to share a code or a link. But if you were just inviting one person or somebody else on Wakelet, you could use their username or email. Once you have contributors, you can click on Manage Contributors to change the settings for them. And then finally, if it's marked to private, nobody else can see it. I don't really know if people can contribute to it at all if it's marked private. That's something I haven't tried. If it's unlisted, then just people with the link can see it. And so that's what I typically use for classes where privacy, is really important. And then public would be searchable, anybody can find it. So when you're building a collection, there you click a little plus, and then it gives you all these options on the bottom. You can kind of see, you can paste any web address, you can add a bit of text, you can add an image, a bookmark, which within Wakelet you can have, it's not talking about your bookmarks on your computer, it's talking about your Wakelet bookmarks, so things that you have saved in the past, a PDF. And then if you click the little more icon there, or I don't know if there's a better word for that, you can also add tweets, video that you record, YouTube videos, which the cool thing about adding YouTube videos is that they will play ad-free within the Wakelet without taking them elsewhere. You can add anything from Google Drive or anything from OneDrive. So it's kind of like you can add anything. I'm not really sure if there's much that you can't add. So they've tried to make it pretty much like everything is right there for you, including you can add any web address for things that aren't necessarily right there. So this is an example of me editing a Wakelet. So I clicked edit, and then this one is highlighting Twitter. You click more, you go to tweets, and then I was just thinking of students like looking up the president or the president's wife. So I looked up the user of Flotus and came up with posts from, so Flotus is Jill Biden's username. And what it does is it shows you 50 of the most recent tweets from the last 2 weeks. And then you can just choose which of those tweets you want to add, check the tweets that you want to add, and then you can add multiple all at one time. So if you want to see that again more slowly, that's there for you to watch or rewatch. But I mean, it's pretty simple. You just experiment with it. If there was some kind of news happening, or students want to find something from their neighborhoods or countries, or anything about their background, they could try getting a little familiar with Twitter that way. And then the Chrome extension is something that I now use, and this is me again going through. So I have really messy bookmarks, but one set of bookmarks that wasn't too messy that I thought I could maybe show is I had some math links, where most of the math links that I had are pretty good. So what I did is I went into my regular computer bookmarks, opened up my math links, which there were only 10. And then there's an option to create a collection from those tabs. So from those tabs, I now am making a collection. I'm just going to call it math resources. And then that's something that I would have. I could share it with other teachers. These math resources aren't all just ready for students to use necessarily. They're more like on the teacher side of things. But if they were different math resources that were all meant for the students to use, then I could share that with students as well. So in terms of quickly building collections, I feel like using a browser extension and then having a bunch of tabs open, or if you had, a set of bookmarks already set up that you wanted to use, that's a great way to go. And otherwise, you can add individual. So this is also using the Chrome extension. I went to the New York Times, what's going on in this picture, kind of classic teacher site, and wanted to add it to a collection. So this is what popped up. Over here is my profile. Again, we'll get into it in a minute, but like in my profile, I have multiple spaces. So I can choose which space to put it in. I can choose whether to put it into one of my collections or into a group collection. Or I can just save it to my bookmarks. I don't have to add it to my collection right away. I can just save it to my Wakelet bookmarks. Seems like I have overtalked. Let me see if I can keep going. Oh, sorry. Funny, I was just hearing somebody on the radio in this situation recently, but I don't normally talk this much all in a row, I guess. Here we have some of the key features that Wakelet highlights are collaboration, which I showed you a little, and then here's a link to a tutorial for collaboration. The link again will come up if you get into the slides, if you're interested in finding it this way. I'm pretty sure you can just also find it on a Wakelet site. And then you can copy collection, which I think I already showed you that as well. We went into immersive reader and we went into embed collection. So I think we covered that pretty well. And I did already show you the Marshall level reading program. So I don't think we need to go back into that. I couldn't remember if I had that later on or not. So here it is, where we can create a space. With Wakelet, you can add more spaces and they just show up as other profiles. So I added one called class and they automatically go unpublished. So you don't have to worry about kind of messing around with things. Things automatically are private or unpublished unless you change a setting. So that's one nice thing. I have quite a few collections that are not public. They're not really ready for anyone to see, as well as spaces, as I was kind of learning as I was going. But teachers who have multiple classes or who are maybe leading different groups or working with different teams, they're going to want to use a link or a code to invite members to your space. So a space is bigger than a collection. A collection is just a list of resources or links. A space is like a whole nother area. It's basically like instead of opening another Wakelet account, or you know, like if you wanted a different Gmail address, you would have to, you know, open a whole nother account basically. But this is all just under your one Wakelet. You could have any number. There's really no limit. I looked, I checked quite a bit, and there's no limit to like how many collections or how many spaces. And again, it's free. So it's really kind of a cool way as a teacher or as a program administrator to keep track of everything, to share resources with your students or teams. So this is something that I certainly have not gotten this far into it yet, but I can imagine wanting to have a space that was for my school or for each class. And then you would be able to see pending invitations, you'd be able to see their username or email, or like to send it to them via their email. Or again, I tend to just like to copy the link or copy the code. Then it'll give you the option to publish the profile or not. I don't think that you need to publish the profile in order to be collaborating with members. It's just more of a matter of if that will be visible. So if it's published, it will be visible on your profile page. If it's not published, then it won't be visible. All right, and then this is, I'm not teaching with Google Classroom, but I know a lot of people are. Clever, I feel like, is more of a K-12 thing. I haven't come across that in adult ed. And then Microsoft Teams. I think there might be some schools that are using that, but I feel like Google Classroom is the main one. So Schoology is not, you can certainly embed things into Schoology, but they don't have it set up yet. But they're on the list of the upcoming editions that they're working on. And I'm sure they're going to work with Canvas. So they just wanted to start kind of small. And so they have it now where you can import very quickly. It's just like a few steps. You can import your students from either of these three learning management systems. And once students are imported, so this is the interesting thing in terms of adult ed, they're basically at this point, there's no differentiation of age. Once students are imported, they're treated, sort of considered to be potentially under 13. So that means that there's a few changes, which I'm probably not sure of all of them, but they wouldn't, like with Unsplash, they wouldn't have that link to Unsplash because potentially there's some images in Unsplash even that might not be considered appropriate. Privacy settings are more limited as well, or like just student accounts don't automatically have any public facing profile, and then students have control over whether anything that they share is visible to other students in the group. So it'd be visible to the teacher, but not necessarily visible to the other students on their profiles unless it was toggled on. So there's definitely some considerations, which I think it's good. It's just like safety stuff, but because we're teaching people who are over 13, like that might not be as much of an issue, but there's not a way to differentiate for that. So this automatically creates Wakelet accounts for the students. And if they log in, well, in this case, I put Google, but if they log in with whichever learning management system that they're using, then they can just automatically start creating collections. Before I forget, this might not be the best place to say it. I guess I'll go back here. I just want to give a little plug for the fact that, yeah, students have, I feel like, I'm curious, I guess, what students are doing, because I'm again working with pretty early, like basic digital learning skills with my learners. So I'm not in the place of like teaching more advanced, but in terms of students keeping track of their bookmarks, and students keeping track of their resources, this, from what I've been hearing and looking into Wakelet more and from various teachers, this has the potential to somewhat transform how students approach kind of the vastness of the internet, and finding ways to start to curate and collect things that are important to them, beyond just bookmarks, which are so, list and text kind of based, but in this way that's much more visual and engaging, and also is more than just a list of links. It includes other kinds of resources as well. So something to be thinking about as I think we all are trying to help students grow in those areas and kind of organize various parts of their lives. That's one area that I think we all can grow in, but certainly we need to help students grow in. So this is some ideas of how teachers use Wakelet. I'm not sure how common it is for different adult ed programs to be creating newsletters. Certainly the programs do. Class newsletters can also be a fun class project. It's a little bit less of a thing maybe if you're not needing to like update families and parents as to what's going on with their K-12 students, but still newsletters, certainly at a program level, is a great way to use Wakelet. And then we've talked a lot about collecting resources and seeing some examples of lesson planning. Documenting your PD, almost like a little bit, either for you to just keep track of the resources or also as a way to have something to share with your program coordinators, or as like kind of resume building. People use it as well to like as a portfolio on a professional level. That's one option to sort of use Wakelet for. Interactive lessons, there's a lot of people that use it for a kind of back channel, student input, student feedback. They can watch a video and then enter some text below. If it's a collaborative Wakelet, then they can just write some comments below. And they can't really reply to each other, which is kind of nice. It's just they make their comment, they make their contribution, and then everybody can read it. With your professional learning network or community, using it, forming groups and sharing your research or sharing your resources together can also be one way for teachers to use it. And then for students, I'm not going to go back into the over and under 13, but students can use it to submit their assignments. So even though everything, if you're in Google Classroom, you should be doing all of that in Google Classroom, but there's some benefits of Wakelet that don't exist in Google Classroom, that sometimes people end up deciding to just use Wakelets to kind of have all of their lessons on it. And so if after you've used it for a while, it starts to make sense to you why that would be a benefit, that's certainly something that some teachers have started to do, is just use it as the place where they can submit their assignments. And it's partly that if it's in a class, it's like going to be more visible to, it's a way for it to be more collaborative and again, a little bit more visually engaging for students to feel like everyone in their group or everyone in their class, they can really see the pictures, the text, the videos, the various things that they're sharing. So it's kind of brings it to a slightly different level. Classroom discussion, kind of what I was already saying too, I guess. Project research, and then especially digital portfolios. So as students are doing research or choosing which of their things that they want to share, using Wakelet for that can be really simple, as well as building those skills of like choosing the thing that you really want other people to see, and then getting to see what other people have shared. So working as a group as well, you can easily set up a Wakelet for a few students to work together to do research together, and then each person in the group can, take a certain task or share certain resources into it for a final project. At my level, this looks very much more basic, but certainly I can't quite pull it off without being in the classroom with students and at first teaching them how to do it. But I can certainly see how it, there's already students who could easily, share a picture, share some text, share a video. There's a number of things that they could easily share to collaborate on the Wakelets together. There's just like a couple more steps that I need to be with them to support them to be ready. So I know that students slightly, at the next level from mine could easily collaborate on Wakelets. I was going to skip this one, but if you are a tech coach and wanting to use this in the classroom or use this to support your staff, particularly sharing out like what's going on in the tech world, I guess, like what tech is being added, sharing resources, creating digital libraries that all the students can access or benefit is something that you see a lot of tech coaches doing in Wakelet. And later on, I have one more example too in the Wakelet that I made for this webinar of a woman who has a ton of resources on her Wakelet that I just wanted to give an example of. She's using it in education, she's using it with students. You can see how that works, but then you can also see how she's using it kind of as a tech coach. She's a principal, but also a tech coach at her school. So here we are. It's time to collaborate, time to really, wherever you are, even if you're watching this later, this will still work. So you can, I think Rob's going to put the link in the chat, but you can also use the QR code with your phone. I'm curious if you don't have the Wakelet app and you did that with your phone, how that would work. But certainly you can go to wakelet.com and we're going to use that code, and I'm going to do it as well. So let me just write that down really quick because I don't have the link set up to grab. And then let me jump out. So I have my Google Chrome browser set up to where the extension, whenever there's a new tab, it actually shows up. There's like a Wakelet new tab that kind of shows up in case you want to add something to it. You can turn that off, but I had it turned on just to kind of see how it worked. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Oh, that probably, let's see what happens if I, because I'm already logged in, so I don't know if I have to log out in order to have the view. Let's see. Trying to exit out of that. Yeah, let me just log out for a second. So here's where this is what people would see is enter code. And then if you didn't get a chance to copy and paste it out of the chat, then you can just type in 18579. See, ooh, this is hard. Is it a 0 or is it an O? Let's see if it works. Oh yeah, it worked. So it was a 0. And you can add your name. So this is where students could be directed whether to be anonymous or whether to actually write their name. So I'll just actually write my name. And it says click here to edit this content. Okay, got it. So you click on edit to edit the content, and then you can go in and click on plus. So this is things that we do to relax or to get energized. I felt like that was pretty appropriate for summer. Like that's hopefully everybody's getting a chance to get a little extra time to get relaxed or to get energized if that's what you need. So one thing that I do, I'll just kind of model a couple here. I'm going to add an image, upload an image. Nope, I don't want to upload an image. That'd be a bunch of screenshots. I want to Oh, now I'm curious because I thought when I did upload, I thought that when I clicked image, it was going to give me Unsplash. So I'm clearly still learning. I do not want to create a new collection, but students can create a whole new collection within that. So I think, yeah, I'm seeing like a different view than what I was expecting. I'm gonna do, let's see what's available to me. I can post my own video, or I can post, actually I did have some images that I wanted to upload, so I'll upload those. I was gonna try to find an Unsplash of yoga because I like to do yoga to get energized. But one thing I like to do, this is not energizing, when I want to, let's see, it says my latest changes could not be saved. So let's see why. I'm gonna edit and try it again. It was a little quirky with me one time too. I've done this successfully quite a bit, but every once in a while it's quirky. And I don't know if it means that that Wakelet itself is a bit laggy or if it's on my end, because I have some weird connection stuff sometimes. Oh yeah, see, that time it worked and I have no idea what the difference is. Anyway, this is our cat. This is Frey sleeping. So this is more on the relax side of things, is just hanging out with my cat. And then I don't know whether gardening is in the category of relaxing or energizing, because it's kind of both for me. But that would be my other one. So there's a picture of my last year's garden, but my this year's garden is pretty similar. Always got to have some kale and some sunflowers. So I'll keep an eye on this and see if we get anything else added in there. I think if I was logged in my own account, then I would also be able to use a few other things. So it's interesting to see this side of things, what's available. So some of the stuff. Oh, and here we go with an addition from Rob. Rob, do you want to say a bit more? I can't interpret this one for you.
Yeah, I have a little miniature Halloween village, so I made the steps and I made the wall out of styrofoam. So
Awesome. Would you say it was energizing, relaxing, or both?
it was
Or
energizing
stressful?
when I got it to work. So let's put it that way. And frustrating as I tried to figure out how to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. So I'm going to say I'm done. And that may grow and that will be visible to folks again long after this is over. I don't know that I'll ever remember to come back and take it away, but it will. Now I'm not logged in. Let's see if it shows me notification or not. So I just go in with Google. A lot of times I'll see a notification if like there's been some activity. So here you've got the little alarm with the little red dot. I've got a notification that 1 minute ago, when Amy added items to the collection. So you don't have to remember to go back and see. I will see if that collection grows. All right, I'm going to go back into here. Thank you for that. Looking forward to seeing what else might get added in there. So just a few things in closing, some tips that I picked up along the way are to use Wakelet for differentiation. So that can look different ways. But one tip that I heard was, I thought was interesting, was that you can create a collection of basically everything that you potentially, would want to be accomplished in a lesson. And then you can copy that collection and take out a few things if you know that like there was like some opportunities for extended learning in there that maybe aren't going to be what every student can do. So if you want to tweak it for different students or for different groups, then you can have it all look the same. So the students, will feel like they're doing the exact same lesson to their level or to their needs. The other thing is to grow the collection slowly. So a lot of people also would say to just add one activity at a time, one or two things. So the lesson that we saw on scatter plots that had many things to do, he may very well have just posted the Monday thing first, the Tuesday thing next, the Wednesday thing next, depending on what his preference is or what works best for him. But that's one other tip that is also more manageable for teachers, but also for students to not get lost or distracted or overwhelmed as they're learning Wakelet, but also as they might be working through a unit. And then using it to build community, encouraging students to start their own Wakelets, keep their own collections, and to share with others is something that Wakelet is really lends itself to the opportunity to see what other people are doing and to work together on things. So in terms of group work and project-based learning and things that we want to give our students more exposure to, or maybe we're already doing, but we could do it within Wakelet too. And then using Wakelet for research, at a beginning level, like certainly with my students, I would probably kind of collect and curate some stuff for them to kind of get them curious or interested and to kind of expose them to some resources and some research that they might want to tap into to use to learn about whatever topic. But again, at a more advanced level, students can be responsible for finding their own content, curating that on a Wakelet, and then also writing a description. So adding a description of what that resource is or where they found it, kind of building that skill of actually, taking a bit more responsibility for the resources that they're finding when they're doing research. And then, as we already said, with group projects, it's a great way to work together as a group. But then also, there's tons of ideas, like way beyond what I can share, about how to kind of like how to use Wakelet in the classroom. And but one of them was for each collection, there's a QR code that is shareable. And so you can print the QR codes or have the students print their QR code, post it around the room, and then students can go around, and if they have a phone or an iPad or whatever, they can scan the QR code and see people's projects that way as well. So many ideas, but that's one for the more techie of us out there that are working with the levels that, and I mean, honestly, that could work at any level, but it just takes, might be a little more doable at higher levels. So Wakelet, Wakelet pros. I don't mean Wakelet professionals. I was thinking about pros and cons. I didn't really make a page for cons, although there certainly probably are some, but some of the pros are that with the layout and with the design, it really helps students to be focused. It doesn't as much take students outside of Wakelet to go other places. A lot of times the content that you link there is shown to you within Wakelet. The exception would be hyperlinks, or not hyperlinks, but if you were going to a website, it would probably take you out to go to the website. But there's quite a lot of content that you can put into the Wakelet that they will just see there without having to go anywhere else. It's accessible long-term, so beyond students' attendance at any specific program or even participation in school at all. This is something that is free for students to use and very simple way for them to keep track of the things that are important to them and to share content with other people. It's free, as I said, there's no limit to the number of collections or spaces, and so that's a huge bonus. There are apps that, you know, if you were sitting in for example, for us, if we were sitting in a workshop or even like right now, you could download the app and you could have been like following along through some of the different things I was sharing and doing your, you know, saving things on Wakelet. First, I haven't really tried this out with students yet because for me, I'm kind of loath to like add one more app or anything. So if my students had the app, I think that would be how, because since my class is on phones for the most part, that's how they would be able to contribute. So in distance learning, depends on what, you know, what their abilities are, what their comfort level is. But certainly the app works really well for just sharing the resources that you're finding. So if you're just on your phone scrolling through things, you find a resource, an article, a video, something that you want to share with your class or with your team, then having the app on your phone makes it really easy to do. I didn't get into all the technicalities of how the app works, but it's, you know, simplified but very similar to what we were looking at. This is my page of resources that, I mean, there's really so much out there. I try to just give you a few key things. This is like a 20-page educator's guide to Wakelet. I wasn't sure, you know, how many people out there are already using Wakelet that might actually end up watching this or coming to this. So there is this is honestly beyond what I even want to wrap my head around, but there was something really fascinating with like how to create breakout games in Wakelet, and it involved multiple steps, but it was like a game that students would like complete one task, and if once they completed that, another task would open to them, and then another task would open to them. So it wasn't all just like given to you at once. It was kind of like a step-by-step thing. This was an article on how to use Wakelet in the classroom that was just pretty basic and helpful. This is a link to our Wakelet, so I'll go there in a second. And then Twitter and YouTube are pretty active places for if you're wanting to learn more about Wakelet. There's a lot going on the Wakelet channel on YouTube, and in the Twitter community, there's just a ton. So I gave you the hashtags that you might want to look up if that's a world that you like to explore. And then if you went to YouTube and found their playlist for the Wakelet Community Week, that was recent. And so it's very, very much updated. It's just a couple weeks ago. So sometimes, you know, when I'm watching stuff, I'm finding things from like March, April, May of 2020, when everyone's just like recovering from switching to distance learning and trying to get their minds around it. And so it's kind of fun to watch the Wakelet Community Week videos because it goes beyond just Wakelet. I mean, a lot of it's just great PD, but it's contextualized, you know, at the current moment right now. So kind of fun to watch that. I'm going to go to the Wakelet TechChat really quick. TechChat Wakelet. I don't know if I called that the right way, but this is the one I made. So here's the link. The first, I put it first so that you could see. And again, I never really went in. If I click edit, I can show you that you can change the display. So I never did that, but you can change the layout, much like I think Padlet is similar to this. You can do media view. Compact view is just like a list. Grid view are little boxes, just like 2 deep. And then I chose mood board just to give you a different, you know, experience, because the other ones I showed, I think, were mostly media view. So the slides are here. That means all the links that I referred to would be in those slides. And then everything else is just resources that you can see. And except I wanted to show you this one more sample of this is somebody who I listen to on a podcast, which is another fun way to learn about any kind of tech that you're wanting to learn about. Here, I got to click done though, so that it'll actually let me click on that. So she's the one I was talking about who's a principal and also a tech coach and also a teacher. So it's interesting to see her, this is her profile page. I think it's one of many. She probably has multiple spaces. You can't see all of her spaces. This is just like what she has published. And if you go over here, then you can see her sections. So on your profile page, you can set up sections. You really don't need to do any of this. Like I hadn't been doing any of this. I just had one simple collection that I was using with my students. So it can be very simple, but it was interesting because she has it set to public and you can see what she's done with her English language arts class, which obviously we'd have to tweak for our setting. But if you click on see more, you can actually see all of her students that have collaborated on different discussions. So I don't even know, there was one about Rosa Parks that I wanted to see, but we can go into this one. So this is one that was talking about Australia's wildfire. She has some instructions here. And then students just like post their writing or they post an article or they could post, some of the other ones, they have, various pictures of things that they post. So that's just another example of a way that people are using Wakelet with their students to kind of collaborate, and then students can, read each other really easily and get ideas maybe for what they want to say without having to feel like too about it or anything. So that is the extent of what I have to share today, I believe. I think that's the end of it.
Great. Amy, could you go back to your Wakelet again, the one you used for your class? Now, after I've seen all this, I want to go back to yours and look at what you did.
Yeah. So I'm going to go home. These are the collections that I have made more recently because truthfully, I didn't have, as much. So I've got over here a few now where I have like some recipes in one. I think eventually I'll have something for my class in one, and I've created some stuff around citizenship and math and some of my own stuff. Let's see, but the one that I share with students is here, and this is the one that has actual views because my students view it all the time. Let's see if I can make it. I know I don't need to make it bigger. I just like, if anyone's on their cell phone, I gotta make it bigger for you because that's what I do.
Never hurts.
Okay. That's such a habit for my students. Yeah, so I have a word wall activity to practice vocabulary, breakout room instructions, along with a PDF. Wait, that's a link to a Google slide this time. Sometimes it's a PDF. And then I have the Marshall reading plan, or the reading skills for today's adults stories. I have 3 stories that are all about reading, and those have activities. So they just go to another Wakelet. They go to the Wakelet collection from Reading Skills for Today's Adults, and there's activities there. And then we have our stories from the last couple months, which were stories. They like to practice past tense, so I never take this down because they always say, keep it there. So there's another word wall. And then there's the code for ReadWorks and MobyMax. So I have this unlisted because, I doubt that anyone will watch this webinar and be so excited for that code that they're going to pretend to be a student and come in and to my ReadWorks. But, I don't want this to be totally public. It's also not something that my students are collaborating at because I just have to wait till we get in person and can kind of do it together, I think. Otherwise, it's only 2 or 3 students that would be able to follow all the steps, I think, to do it, even though there's not that many steps, but.
So what's the process you go through, like, to get them there every day? You change the code every day? Do you change the content every day? So how do you get them there every day?
I would have anything private that I shouldn't show if I open up my WhatsApp. So I have WhatsApp on my phone as well as on desktop. And I have a level 2 and 3 class that is, so it's 2-3 English class. I'm the only one that posts in it now because we used to collaborate in here, and that kind of had a few weird things that got shared. So this is where I share it. I'm sorry, it's kind of small. Like, there's no way to enlarge this one, but so I have Amy's ESL class Wakelet is there, and that's it. So periodically, I will reshare my Wakelet link, and then wait, you can't see it, can you?
I can't, no.
Here it
So
is.
you send
see
them,
it?
you send them the link on, there you go. You send them the link on WhatsApp.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So on WhatsApp, there is a link, and it shows up with the picture, which is kind of that confirmation, like, I'm in the right place. And so then they click on that, and then they just end up at my Wakelet, and that's it.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
It's kind of like making a web page so everybody lands on the same spot. And then
Yeah, and I used to try to have a Google site, and that just actually felt like a lot more work. And because we're not using Google Classroom either, and anyway, that one's been a website, it just felt like this actually turned out to be the easiest thing that I could find. And it turns out that Wakelet is like this incredibly active community, and they're like building things so fast that it feels like they're going to be around for a while. And so it's like it might be worth teaching students how to do it, as opposed to something else that might be fading away. This is not fading away because they're partnering a lot with Microsoft and on. So.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I will post all of the links in the description below the video for those people who are watching on a video. And with that, we'll wrap it up. So thank you very much, Amy.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.